Welcome to The Crunch with Crib. I'm Jess, and each episode I'll be talking with some of WA's best real estate agents and business people to find out what makes them tick and what lessons they've learned on their journey to success. In a sea of sales reps, Rob Mandanici and his agency, Paddington Realty, stands apart with their leasing-only focus. Rob also sits across a number of industry groups, so he's uniquely positioned to comment on where real estate is headed, as well as what makes a great property manager. And it was a pleasure to chat with him for this episode of The Crunch. Rob, thank you so much for coming into The Crunch.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. Now, we have got you in to chat about something a little bit different. Same, but different. Obviously, a lot of the guests that we have on the show are really sales focused in regards to real estate, whereas you have a slightly different focus in your business. So I wanted to talk about the structure of Paddington because I believe you're very leasing focused rather than sales.
Yeah, we're a leasing and property management only business, and we've taken that approach. I guess we've evolved to that approach over the last 3 to 4 years. More so that focus this year, sort of as of early this year, making that total cut to cut sales out of the business.
Okay, so a couple of questions on that. Why?
Yeah, look, I think some would say it's a risk. Why cut sales out of your business? Why cut a very large, proportion of the market that's out there? Ultimately, for us, it was a desire to do what we do and do it well. Yeah. And focus on that one aspect of business that we understand, that's effectively in our blood and in our DNA is property management.
Yeah, okay. So is your background in leasing, in property management?
Yeah, PM and leasing, nearly 17 years now.
Okay. Well, and then, so the sales staff that you had previously at Paddington, were you selling as well, or you've always been kind of overlooking PM?
Yeah, we were doing some selling, and look, we were selling things, but effectively it was never our heart was never in it. Mm-hmm. And I know that's probably perhaps doing a bit of a disservice there, but look, the honesty is our heart was never in it, and there was always a lot more joy from leasing and property management and the challenges surrounding that, coupled with, I guess, the direction of the market and the market we operate in. Sales. We sort of realised you either had to be specialised at selling or listing and selling, and the negotiation that goes with that, or specialise in leasing, property management, and the challenges that surround that side of the business.
A couple of follow-up questions from that. So the first is you mentioned the joy of property managing and I guess the passion that goes into that. Tell me about the business. Tell me about the people that work for you, the day-to-day and what it is that makes a good property manager.
I guess you got to be organised.
Yeah.
You've got to be organised. You can't take too much to heart. And look, at the end of the day, we're entwined in people's lives, and it's often said that we are more than just collecting rent. We often become entwined in people's relationships and what happens in those relationships. Their financial, we have financial relationships, and what evolves around that. In particular, I guess a perfect example, the last couple of years in Perth, times have been quite tough. People have come under financial hardship, which has meant the inability to pay their rent or mortgages, and difficulties in that, which has put emotional and perhaps relationship stress on people. And we see a lot of that firsthand. And as property managers, often, perhaps sadly or rightly or wrongly, the property manager is often the first person to hear about it. I guess sometimes the first shoulder that perhaps a tenant cries on, and it's challenging, but I guess without sounding cheesy about it, rewarding. You do have an opportunity to help, try and get people out of situations sometimes, and as much as sometimes we don't want to become, I guess, emotionally entangled in that, sometimes you can't help but do that.
Tell me, property managers can get a bad rap. Just like agents can. You mentioned your tenants there, but tell me about the relationship between a PM and a tenant and then a PM and an investor, and kind of how you juggle the needs, I guess, of both, especially at the moment where people are, under financial stress on both sides.
Yeah, look, ultimately a property manager or agent's duty is to their client, their owner, or their lessor for if you want a more particular term there.
Yeah.
Our first duty is to our client, and our first duty is to protect that client's interests, their financial interests, and have their best interests at heart at all time and work in their interests. But in saying that, I guess ultimately there's a human relationship there with the tenant as well, to do the right thing by them. And doing the right thing by the tenant is effectively protecting the owner's interests, being prompt with things. So, if something needs repair, advising the owner of their rights behind that, communicating with the tenant at all times. That often, going back to the comment you made there about, the bad rap sometimes, I guess, that property managers get, often that can be negated by communication. And we're all guilty of poor communication at times. It's a busy role, and often it's not that we don't want to communicate with people, but quite often we got a lot of balls in the air at one time, someone may think that getting back to you within an hour or so is acceptable. Others perhaps are expecting more contact and more touch, perhaps in a quicker time frame.
Yeah. What is the volume of tenancies that your PMs are expected to deal with on a, the number of people that they're managing at any one time?
Yeah, so look, I guess there is no industry average, and that's a pretty sore question, that one, all the time. And you might go into any office, jump on any property management Facebook forum around the country, and it's a sore topic because, for example, what might work in one suburb or in one particular area or portfolio is not going to work in another. The more demanding, perhaps, the clientele, the older the property, the more work maintenance required on a daily basis will mean that person can't effectively manage more properties than, say, somebody with a portfolio of new builds or perhaps even apartments all in one complex. I've managed all manner of properties, and there's no shame in saying if you're managing a whole building, all the tenancies in one building, it is a lot easier than a portfolio sprawled across numerous suburbs of, say, older housing, 50, 60, 70-year-old housing. Days like today, there's going to be roof leaks, there's going to be plumbing issues, there's going to be call-outs from the State Emergency Service and plumbers and electricians for emergency work and whatnot. And I guess you've just got to balance that against against what else is in the portfolio.
So where is your portfolio sitting at the moment? I know you were based Ellenbrook, the Vines area.
Yeah, so a lot of our portfolio itself runs in that Swan Valley corridor.
Yeah.
Effectively all the way down Guildford Road back to the city.
Okay.
So we manage a mixture of units, villas, townhouses, newer builds, older houses throughout suburbs like, say, Morley and Naranda, up to Guildford, Bayswater, Bassendean, and then through to new builds in estates like Dayton, Caversham, Brabham, Ellenbrook and the Vines.
Okay.
A handful of rural properties smattered in there and sort of vineyard properties, but predominantly new builds in new suburbs and some of those older, more traditional houses down Guildford Road.
Okay. So what are you looking for? We mentioned communication, organisation. What are you looking for when you hire a property manager?
Funny, we've just hired an inspection manager who has no direct real estate experience. We were effectively looking with the new hire personality, and we've hired somebody who's actually a hairdresser by trade.
Okay, there you go.
She has great people and interpersonal skills,
I can imagine,
and a really good attention to detail. So we sort of we've never hired a qualified property manager. We've never hired somebody who's come to us with a license or reps ticket or whatnot, or registration. I guess we've always looked for a skill that we needed, and it's not necessarily someone who's already trained up and experienced. And happy to train them along the way. Happy to give them some on-the-job training. But ultimately this time we were looking for someone with some pretty good interpersonal skills, the ability to build a relationship quickly, and quite frankly, I think a hairdresser really hits that mark. That ability to integrate and talk to all manner of different clients on a daily basis that they may have coming in and out of their salon, for example. It was a no-brainer when we met her. It was just an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah.
And we put that ad out across probably a more non-traditional platform, Facebook, in terms of job advertising.
Yeah.
We didn't use any of the usual platforms or usual avenues you might go down. We had an overwhelming response. I think we had something like 85 or 86 applications.
Okay.
In a span of 3 or 4 days.
On Facebook?
On Facebook only.
There you go. Wow.
Amazing.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
Incredible. I want to go back to the market because you mentioned before, obviously, amongst a number of other things that kind of, moved you towards leasing only, the market was one of those decisions. And we spoke to the guys from Professionals a couple of weeks ago who said that they'd also tried to integrate, a rent roll more so into a very sales-heavy office. And that was a really good decision, when it comes to the market at the moment. how does that affect, obviously we've heard all about sales at the moment and it's really difficult to sell. Is that a good thing for you? Is that a bad thing for you? How does that affect your...
Look, yeah, there's no doubt sales have been a challenge out there, and any of our colleagues that we speak to, it's challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's across, I guess, a lot of different segments of the market around Perth and Western Australia more broadly. And, integrating a PM business into an existing business, I think, is a brilliant business strategy.
Mm-hmm.
PM is the nuts and bolts of an agency, whether you choose to be a PM-only agency like ourselves, or sort of a multi-focused agency doing the traditional selling and leasing and PM. It really is that backbone. Mm-hmm. And it will pay the rent in tough times. It'll pay the wages. It'll pay the bills. Mm-hmm. And I dare say it. I think any business that perhaps is sales only, you're really going to feel that in these tougher times. There's no doubt about that. The market itself for us, the lack of sales, I guess, has pushed more properties into the leasing market. Mm-hmm. It's allowed us to be a little more discerning, I think, in what we pick up in terms of business.
Yeah.
The financial markets themselves, I guess, the way banks have cut back on their lending practices has pushed a lot of great tenants into the market. So people who traditionally might have gone out to buy a house have now come back into the rental market. So there's a lot of awesome tenants out there with good credentials and really strong applications that are snapping up rental properties now, which is great for us in our business.
Mm-hmm. And what are the conversations you're having with your lessors? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
At the moment around rent and, I'm assuming they're always asking you, can we push our rent up and that kind of thing?
For the first time in sort of 4 years, we are increasing rents, which is great. And I think
is that due to the good tenants coming back on the market and all
good tenants in the
things?
market, tightening of lending practices. Has seen again those what would have been a traditional buyer exit the market. You're seeing a lot of people perhaps, and I don't really like to touch on this, but forced selling. Yeah. Where either they've done it or the bank has pushed them to do it. Mm-hmm. We've had a few of those. Whereby they've returned to the market as tenants as well. So, they've got themselves, they've extradited themselves out of the position they're in, and now back in the rental market again, making really good quality tenants, and they're returning to the market as well. Mm. But we've found that the conversations we've been having over the last couple of weeks in particular have been very positive ones with owners, talking about increasing rents, extending leases, even to some extent those owners that can, talking to them about acquiring other properties. So, it's had a positive effect.
Yeah. I'm assuming when your owners want to buy and sell that and they come to you, you've got a very good relationship with someone else that you refer them on to?
Yeah, and I guess, look, we have to. And we've got probably 3 agents in sort of 3 distinct areas that we do recommend them to and happy to recommend them to. And those 3 agents specialise in selling. Yeah. And they're good at selling in those pockets that we operate in. They're really good at it, very successful at it. And I guess those couple of agents use a few different methods, and that's probably why we've chosen to work with them. And some of them are small operators, others are inside big franchises. But again, it's about that one-on-one relationship, I guess, that we can then impart onto that potential vendor.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about communication. It's come up a couple of times. It's obviously such a key part of the relationship between a PM and their client. And what we've been talking about a lot in this room with salespeople is that the way that people want to communicate has really changed over the past few years. Obviously, with technology, we've talked about Facebook, with the speed that people, want to hear things. I'm assuming that's something that's possibly even more acute for a property manager in terms of people expecting, an answer straight away. I know we get contacted on some PM pages that we manage on the weekend, with people wanting answers straight away. So how have you kind of managed that?
Yeah, look, it's changed. I mean, technology's changed. And look, I think for the better, but it's also blurred a lot of boundaries. Mm-hmm. So look, I can say, when I started my career in property management, we relied a lot on the mail. We relied on tenants walking into our office, collecting a rental list or looking at listings in the window. We don't have a traditional office today. We have an office, but it's not at street level. Yeah. We don't have a rent list. It's online. We don't mail anything to our tenants, our owners. We don't communicate with them that way anymore.
I remember having to go in and pay
rent.
At the...
Yeah. And we used to have tenants come in and pay rent. We used to have tenants come in and report maintenance and pick up keys. And and do all the things that I guess would probably perhaps be foreign to a lot of new property managers coming into the business this week, this month, this year, or even the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I think it's changed for the better, but there are those blurred lines. And, quite often we'll have tenants or owners reach out to us by private messaging us on our, through private Facebook or Instagram, wanting to know something at perhaps 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. Look, we cut down a lot of that. We have an owner and tenant portal that we can interact with our owners and tenants with. There's a lot of information in those portals that effectively cuts down a lot of the common questions.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You're an owner. You're at home on a Sunday, rainy Sunday afternoon. You're probably doing your tax return from 2 or 3 years ago, and you need that statement that you're missing because the accountant's hounding you, and the only time you've got to do it is on a rainy Sunday arvo.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why they're reaching out.
Yeah.
I'd probably do the same. You're frustrated, but we've got a portal. They can jump in, they can grab that statement or find out what that income or expenditure was, and at least it tides them over. Look, it's not going to answer everybody's questions, but it's, there's some opportunity for them to sort of self-serve and get some of that info. So technology's been good in that regard, and that sort of moves away from some of those blurred lines. There's a bit of a self-help portal they can go to.
Yeah.
But it has changed. It has changed a lot. The way we communicate, even on a more official level in terms of electronic service to our clients and, sending them notices and other notifications as well has changed, and not relying on the mail anymore.
No. And how do you manage that for your property managers? Even with the advent of Facebook as a business development tool, which is, more so in the past has been seen for salespeople again, but we're seeing it more and more for a business developer on the property management side. How do you kind of see that evolution as well?
Look, it's a fantastic tool, and I say that as somebody who 3 years ago who didn't have a Facebook account, wasn't on Facebook, didn't believe in it. And there's another agent in Perth who, well, it might have been a bit more than 3 years, who convinced me it was a good idea, and I said, I said I wouldn't swear, but I said bullshit. I said, and I just said, look, prove it to me, and they did, and they both sat down with me and said, well, here's our stats. Here are the commissions we made from Facebook. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. So I scratched my head and thought, what can we do around this? And so for us, it was an evolution of really engaging on some local Facebook groups, community groups, and slowly building up that presence there, and not really going in for the kill. I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years in the making, but really going out there and just providing advice.
Yeah.
When someone's got a tenancy issue or can't get hold of their property manager. And really it's a lot of, look, I know you called the emergency number 10 minutes ago, but, they're probably not sitting on that phone. Leave a message, give them a couple of hours, they'll get back to you. And, or the usual, the owner hasn't done this, so, and, the typical wise advice, just stop paying the rent because that'll fix everything. Well, it really doesn't. That's gonna get you into more trouble than it's worth. And, but, slowly building up that presence and profile, and to be quite frank, about close now to 60% of all new business that we bring on is a direct result of Facebook engagement.
Yeah.
And that's solely Facebook engagement.
Yeah.
We haven't even sort of really pushed the other platforms that are out there.
Yeah, that's something that obviously we're talking about a lot now is
absolutely.
You do have to engage and you do have to be there providing, it's a means to provide advice so that you're there, and then when people need you, they will find you.
Absolutely. And rewind 10, 15 years ago, this is now the equivalent of flyer dropping and having boards up and community boards, for example, at local high schools and primary schools, and fate boards and all of that. It's the new medium. I mean, it's been around for a while now, but it's it's still working.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wanted to quickly talk to you about your involvement in the industry outside of your business, because you are pretty, you've got your finger in a lot of pies. You've one of the main organisers of RE Bar Camp, obviously with us, which is great. You are a board member of REFWA, so the Real Estate Employers Federation of WA.
Yes.
And you're an administrator of the Real Estate Business Owners Group, which I believe is a pretty active forum on Facebook, like we were just discussing. So I guess I wanted to talk to you about how important it is for you, why you see it to be so important to get involved with the industry as a whole.
Yeah, look, there's probably one thing that always stuck with me was an old boss I had, not in WA, so I'm not going to offend anyone here, an old boss who really didn't want his staff to upskill, and didn't want his staff to go out and get a license or do anything like that, because the fear was they might open a business next door and compete with him.
Yeah.
And education's important, and I think some of the best education you can get is learning off your peers. And we all do things differently, and I think most broadly, look, real estate agents are actually good people.
Yeah.
The public from time to time do like to have a crack at us. Broadly, there's a lot of good agents out there, and it's a pretty collegiate industry. And proven by that, RE Barcamp, I think, is a great organisation. You get a couple of hundred real estate agents in sales and leasing and PM and administration who want to be there because they want to be there. This is a couple of hundred people coming together, not because they want CPD or professional points to go towards their licensing requirements. They're paying $30, $40 out of their own pocket. Their bosses aren't paying for them to be there, so it's very affordable. And they want to contribute.
Yeah.
And it's a very open forum. It's something where there's no real agenda.
Yeah.
There's a very loose agenda at the start of the day, and then the day takes its own form. And it's an unconference. It's not a conference. It's great. It's not stuffy. It's not people in suits swanning around preaching and telling you've got to buy the latest book or download the latest ebook off Facebook or something like that. It really is. It's gritty. It's agents learning from agents and contributing something to the day.
I think it's also the beautiful thing about RE Barcamp, and it's possibly why I love the Crunch so much, is it's WA agents. And I think WA agents don't often get to hear from WA agents who really know their market better than,
That's right. And look, it's not, I was born on the East Coast, but it's not some preacher from the East coming over and telling everyone what they've done wrong or how to do things better. It's an agent in Claremont perhaps talking to an agent in Ellenbrook, sharing ideas on how they sell better, or an agent in Baldivis talking to an agent in Mandurah about the differences in their leasing market. That's what it's about. And the fact that what's working in the eastern suburbs might be transferable in the western suburbs in tough times, or the southern suburbs to north of the river. It's just about sharing those ideas and coming together and homegrown solutions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the biggest, I guess, topics that you guys are talking about as an industry at the moment? Some of the things that you've really noticed that keep coming up again and again.
Yeah, look, change is one of those challenges in our industry, and look, some people, it's human nature. You get stuck in your ways. There's another review of the Act coming up. We've had some recent changes to domestic violence. Obviously, unfortunately, domestic violence is becoming a larger issue in society, which is terrible in itself. But I guess we as agents and the Act itself has had to evolve, and there's some new changes to the Act and the regulations that have come in surrounding that. That's been a hot topic in terms of the processes around that and what we've had to do to sort of change with that. And I guess now, a more positive sense in the market. Again, rents being increased, more leasing activity, less properties on market. Coming to terms with that good change that, perhaps brighter times are coming.
What other insights are you getting from, the people that you're on boards with and RE Barcamp and all of those types of things? What kind of things you ask them about running a business?
Yeah, look, running a business isn't easy.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates across all sectors, whether you're a PM, a sales, or a traditional, sort of multifaceted business out there. It's not easy. There's taxes and wages and all the usual change and government changes. One of the biggest ones, and I guess, perhaps I've got a slightly better understanding being part of REFWA, have been some of the recent changes to the employment legislation surrounding the minimum wages for salespeople and minimum hours and whatnot. And that's been a big change. And that's been a challenge for some businesses where they've had to have some difficult conversations with salespeople surrounding that and really gear up for that change and the review date that's just passed us recently and really working around that. And that's been a challenge. That's been a challenge for a lot of businesses.
Yeah. I feel like it's important at that kind of juncture to just tell people that REFWA is a resource that business owners can go to if they've got questions
Absolutely.
They can call and
yeah, absolutely. Look, a great resource. A free plug for REFWA, and I'm happy to. Real Estate Employers Federation. It's a WA organisation specialising in West Australian real estate employment legislation, employment law. Good resource for documents and forms. Employment contracts and everything that goes with it from the start to the finish of somebody's employment. So it's a good resource, and again another homegrown resource backing real estate employers in WA.
Beautiful. My last question for you, Rob. What are you excited about? What do you think the industry should be excited about over the next couple of years?
Look, I think they should be excited. There's some stability. We've just had a federal election, perhaps a surprising result for some. That election whipped up a pretty big attack on the property industry, and I think property managers, sales agents, principals, leasing consultants, I think should be very happy that at least for the foreseeable future, we've got some stability in our industry. That the property industry is still a very stable and strong market. And I think for WA, the only way is up now. We've had 4 very tough years, probably tougher than most have seen them. And I really think now, at least in our side of the business, in terms of leasing and PM, the only way is up.
Beautiful. That's a great way to end it, isn't it? Thank you so much for your time, Rob.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you later on in the year at RE Bar Camp.
Can't wait.
That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'd love any feedback or guest suggestions. So hit me up on Instagram. You can find me on Jess @Crib. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to tell a friend.